Listen careful. This might hurt a little, because what you're about to hear is the real reason you still can't speak English. Not your grammar, not your vocabulary, not your confidence. You've been practicing the wrong way. For months, maybe years, you've been learning English, watching videos, listening carefully, understanding almost everything. But when it's your turn to speak, your mind goes blank, your words disappear, and you stay silent. Why? Because no one told you the truth. Fluency is not built the way you think. And today, that changes. In the next few minutes, you're going to discover 12 powerful lessons that will completely break your old habits, rebuild the way your brain works, and finally unlock your ability to speak naturally, confidently, and without fear. So don't skip this, because if you're still struggling to speak English, this is exactly what you needed to hear. 1. You don't have a speaking problem. You have a thinking problem. Listen carefully. This might be the most uncomfortable truth you've ever heard about your English. You don't struggle because your English is weak. You struggle because your thinking process is broken. Right now, inside your mind, something very slow is happening every time you try to speak. Someone asks you a simple question. What did you do today? And instead of answering naturally, your brain freezes for a second. Then it starts working like a machine. First, the thought appears in your native language. Then you try to convert it into English, word by word, piece by piece. And while you are doing that, the moment is already gone. The conversation has already moved forward, and you are still stuck, building a sentence in your head. This is the real problem, not vocabulary. Not grammar, not confidence. Translation. Translation is the silent enemy that is slowing you down, because translation is not speaking. Translation is a delay, and fluency cannot exist where there is delay. Think about this. When you speak in your own language, do you translate? No. You just think and speak instantly, effortlessly. There is no gap between thought and words. That is fluency. Now compare that to what you do in English. There is always a gap, a pause, a hesitation, and in that gap, your confidence dies. Because while you are translating, you are also doubting. Is this correct? Is this the right tense? Am I making a mistake? And suddenly, speaking becomes stressful, heavy, unnatural. This is why you feel tired after trying to speak English, because your brain is doing double work. First thinking, then translating, instead of just expressing. Now here is the truth that will change everything for you. Fluent speakers do not translate. They don't build sentences. They don't calculate grammar. They don't pause to convert thoughts. They think directly in English. And because of that, their words flow naturally, without effort, without fear, without delay. So the real question is not, how do I speak better English? The real question is, how do I stop translating? Because the moment you remove translation, everything changes. Your speed increases, your confidence rises, your mind becomes lighter, and speaking becomes natural. But this doesn't happen automatically. You have trained your brain for years to think in one language and then convert. So now you have to retrain your brain. You have to teach it a new habit, a faster habit, a direct habit. Instead of thinking, "Main kaya bolan," you start thinking in simple English. What should I say? Instead of forming complex sentences in your head, you start using small, clear thoughts. You simplify your thinking. You reduce the pressure. You allow yourself to speak, even if it's not perfect, because perfection is not the goal. Speed and clarity are the goal. In the beginning, it will feel strange. Your mind will resist. You will feel slow. You will feel uncomfortable. But that's a good sign, because it means your brain is changing. It means you are breaking an old pattern and building a new one. And if you stay consistent with this, something powerful will happen. One day, you will realize you didn't translate. You just spoke without thinking, without fear, without stopping. And in that moment, you will understand what real fluency feels like. Not forced, not memorized, not practiced, but natural. And it all starts here, by fixing the one thing that has been holding you back all along: the way you think. 2. Grammar is not your priority. Listen carefully. This is where most English learners destroy their own progress. You've been told your whole life, first learn grammar, then start speaking. So you follow the rules. You study tenses. You memorize structures. You try to understand every detail. And yet, when it's time to speak, you still can't. Why? Because grammar does not create fluency. It creates hesitation. Think about what happens inside your mind when you try to speak. Before you say anything, your brain starts checking, is this present perfect? Should I use has or have? Is this sentence correct? And in that moment, you stop speaking. You start thinking, and once you start thinking too much, fluency disappears. Because speaking is not a test. It's not an exam where you need perfect answers. It's a real-time action. And real-time action cannot wait for perfect grammar. Now think about a child. A child doesn't know grammar rules. A child doesn't understand tenses. But a child speaks. Why? Because a child focuses on expression, not perfection. A child uses broken sentences, but still communicates clearly. And slowly, without even realizing, grammar improves naturally. This is how real language learning works, not from rules, but from repetition, exposure, and use. You've been doing the opposite. You've been trying to understand everything before using anything. And that's why you feel stuck, because knowledge without usage is useless in speaking. Now here is the truth you need to accept. You don't need perfect grammar to speak English. You need enough grammar to be understood. That's it, nothing more, because communication is not about being perfect. It's about being clear. If someone understands you, you are already successful. So instead of asking, is my grammar perfect? Start asking, can they understand me? This one shift will change everything because it removes pressure. It frees your mind. It allows you to speak without fear. Now, this doesn't mean grammar is useless. Grammar is important, but not at the beginning, not during speaking. Grammar is something you improve after you speak, not before. You learn from mistakes. You adjust over time. You refine naturally. But you don't stop yourself in the moment just to be perfect. Because every time you stop to think about grammar, you are training your brain to hesitate. And hesitation becomes a habit, a dangerous habit. That keeps you silent. So what should you do instead? You simplify. You use basic structures. You repeat simple sentences again and again. You focus on flow, not perfection, because fluency is not about complexity. Fluency is about continuity. Keep speaking, keep expressing, keep moving forward, even if it's not perfect, even if it feels messy. Because messy speaking is better than perfect silence. And if you follow this path, something powerful will happen. Your brain will relax. Your words will come faster. Your confidence will grow. And slowly, without even trying, your grammar will improve. Naturally, effortlessly, just like it did when you learned your first language. So stop waiting to be perfect. Stop overthinking grammar and start doing the one thing that actually builds fluency. Speak. 3. You're consuming too much, practicing too little. Listen carefully. This is the trap almost every English learner falls into, and it feels productive. That's why it's dangerous. You watch videos. You listen to podcasts. You scroll through lessons. You understand everything. And at the end of the day, you feel like you learned something. But then someone asks you a simple question, and you can't answer. Your mind goes blank again. Why? Because you are consuming, not practicing. And consumption creates an illusion of progress. It makes you feel like you're improving, when in reality, you're just becoming a better listener, not a speaker. Think about this honestly. How many hours have you spent watching English content? Now compare that to how many minutes you actually speak. The difference is massive. And that's the problem, because speaking is a skill, and every skill in the world follows the same rule. You don't improve by watching. You improve by doing. You can watch 1,000 football matches, but you won't become a player. You can watch gym videos every day, but your body won't change. Because real growth happens in action, not observation. English is no different. When you only consume, your brain becomes passive. It understands, but it doesn't react. It doesn't produce language. It doesn't build speaking ability. And then, when it's time to speak, your brain struggles because you never trained it for that. You trained it to understand, not to respond. That's why you feel stuck. That's why your fluency doesn't improve, even though you're learning every day. Now here is the shift you need to make. Stop being a consumer and become a creator of language. After watching any video, don't move to the next one. Pause and speak. Repeat what you heard. Say it in your own words. Talk to yourself. Describe your day. Answer imaginary questions. Because the moment you open your mouth, your brain starts building real connections. It starts forming sentences. It starts learning how to respond. And that's where fluency is created. Not in silence, but in expression, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if you make mistakes, even if you struggle to find words. That struggle is necessary. That struggle is growth, because every time you try to speak, your brain becomes faster, stronger, more flexible. But if you keep consuming without speaking, your brain stays lazy. It waits, it listens, but it never acts, and fluency never comes. So from today, change your ratio. Less watching, more speaking, even if it's just 10 minutes. Even if it's alone, even if it feels awkward, because that 10 minutes of speaking is more powerful than hours of watching. And if you stay consistent with this, you will notice something. Your mind will stop freezing. Your words will come faster, and speaking will start to feel natural, not forced, not scary, but real. And it all begins when you stop hiding behind content and start using your voice. 4. You're afraid of making mistakes. Listen carefully. This fear you feel, this hesitation that stops your words before they even begin, this voice in your head that says, wait, what if this is wrong? This is not helping you. This is destroying your fluency. And the most dangerous part is you think it's protecting you. You believe that staying silent is better than making a mistake. You believe that speaking perfectly is more important than speaking freely. You believe that if you just learn a little more, wait a little longer, prepare a little better, then one day you will speak confidently. But that day never comes, because confidence does not come from preparation. Confidence comes from exposure, from repetition, from doing the thing you are afraid of again and again until your fear loses its power. Right now, your brain is wired in a very specific way. Every time you think about speaking English, your mind immediately jumps to risk. What if I say it wrong? What if they laugh? What if I sound stupid? And because of these thoughts, you stop yourself. You stay quiet. You choose silence. And every time you choose silence, you are teaching your brain something. You are teaching it that speaking English is dangerous. You are reinforcing fear. You are strengthening the habit of hesitation. And slowly, without even realizing, this fear becomes part of your identity. You start believing, I can't speak. I'm not confident. I'm not ready. But none of that is true. You are not incapable. You are just untrained in facing mistakes. Because the truth is, mistakes are not a problem. They are the path. Every fluent speaker you see today, every confident voice you hear, every person who speaks without fear, they all went through the same phase you are in right now. They made mistakes. Hundreds of them, thousands of them. They said things wrong. They used the wrong words. They mixed tenses. They paused. They struggled, but they didn't stop. And that's the difference. They didn't wait to become perfect. They spoke while being imperfect. And in doing that, they became fluent. Now think about this deeply. What is the worst thing that can happen if you make a mistake? Someone corrects you? Someone doesn't understand? Someone notices? That's it. Nothing more. You are not in danger. You are not being judged the way you think. Most people are too focused on themselves to even care. And even if someone notices, so what? That moment passes, but the growth stays. Every mistake you make is data for your brain. It learns, it adjusts, it improves, but only if you allow the mistake to happen. If you avoid mistakes, you avoid learning. If you avoid speaking, you avoid fluency. So the real danger is not making mistakes. The real danger is staying silent. Because silence feels safe, but it keeps you stuck. It keeps you exactly where you are. Now here is the shift you need to make. You must change your relationship with mistakes. Stop seeing them as failure. Start seeing them as progress. Every time you make a mistake, tell yourself, this means I am trying. This means I am learning. This means I am moving forward. Because you are, and the more you speak, the more mistakes you make, the faster you improve. There is no other way, no shortcut, no secret method, just repetition, just exposure, just courage. Now imagine a different version of yourself, a version that speaks without fear, a version that doesn't stop to think about being perfect, a version that expresses ideas freely, even if the sentence is not perfect. That version of you is not more talented, not more intelligent, not more gifted. That version of you is simply less afraid of mistakes, and you can become that person, but only if you make one decision: to speak anyway, to speak even when you are unsure, to speak even when your sentence is not perfect, to speak even when your voice shakes. Because every time you do that, you break the fear, you weaken it, you take control back, and slowly something powerful begins to happen. The fear becomes smaller. The hesitation becomes shorter, the words come faster, the confidence grows, and one day you will realize something surprising. You are speaking without overthinking, without fear, without stopping, not because you became perfect, but because you stopped being afraid of being imperfect. And that is the moment your fluency truly begins. 5. You practice alone, but freeze with people. Listen carefully. You already know more English than you think. You can understand videos. You can follow conversations. You can read. You can even form sentences in your mind. But the moment a real person stands in front of you, everything collapses. Your heart starts beating faster. Your mind goes blank. Words disappear. And suddenly, you feel like you know nothing. Why does this happen? Because you trained your English in a safe environment, but real conversations are not safe. They are unpredictable, they are fast, they are messy, and your brain is not ready for that. When you practice alone, there is no pressure. No one is waiting for your answer. No one is judging your pause. No one is reacting to your words. You have time. You can think slowly. You can fix your sentences. You can repeat. You can control everything. But in real life, you control nothing. Someone asks a question, and they expect an answer immediately. Not after 10 seconds. Not after translation. Not after thinking about grammar. Right now. And that pressure, that sudden demand for speed, is what breaks you, because your brain has never been trained for it. You trained it to understand. You trained it to think slowly, but you never trained it to respond under pressure. So when that moment comes, your system crashes. Not because you don't know English, but because you don't know how to perform in real time. This is the difference between knowledge and skill. Knowledge sits in your mind. Skill comes out of your mouth. And skill only develops in one way: by doing it in real situations. You cannot simulate real conversation alone. You cannot create real pressure by yourself. You cannot build real confidence in isolation, because confidence is not built in silence. It is built in interaction, in uncomfortable moments, in fast responses, in imperfect conversations. This is why you feel confident alone, but nervous with people, because your confidence is not real yet. It is untested, and the moment it gets tested, it breaks. But this is not a weakness. This is a sign, a clear signal that you are missing one critical piece: live speaking experience. You need to put yourself in situations where you don't feel ready, where you don't feel comfortable, where you are forced to respond, even if it's messy, even if it's slow, even if you make mistakes, because that is where real growth happens. At first, it will feel difficult. Your sentences will be broken. You will pause. You will search for words. You will feel embarrassed, but that is part of the process, because every time you go through that experience, your brain adapts. It learns how to handle pressure. It learns how to respond faster. It learns how to stay calm, and slowly, the fear starts to disappear. The pauses become shorter. The words come easier. The conversations become smoother, but only if you face it. If you avoid real conversations, you stay stuck in a loop. You keep practicing alone. You keep understanding more, but your speaking never improves, because you are missing the one thing that matters: real interaction. Now understand this clearly. You don't need perfect English to start speaking with people. You need courage. You need willingness. You need consistency. Start small, short conversations, simple sentences, basic responses. Don't try to impress. Don't try to sound advanced. Just try to communicate. That's enough, because communication builds fluency, not perfection. And the more you do this, the more natural it becomes. Until one day, you find yourself in a conversation and you are not panicking. You are not freezing. You are responding naturally, without overthinking, without fear. And in that moment, you will realize something powerful. You were never bad at English. You were just untrained in real conversations. And now, you are no longer hiding. You are no longer practicing in silence. You are using your voice in the real world, where fluency is built, and that is where your transformation truly begins. 5. You practice alone, but freeze with people. Listen carefully. There is a version of you that sounds confident in English. It exists. You've heard it. When you're alone, when no one is watching, when there's no pressure, you can form sentences, you can speak, you can even sound fluent. But the moment a real person is in front of you, that version disappears. Your throat tightens, your mind empties, your confidence vanishes, and you go back to silence. This is not because you forgot English. This is because you never trained for real situations. You trained in comfort. But real conversations don't happen in comfort. They happen in uncertainty, in speed, in pressure, and your brain reacts differently under pressure. When you are alone, your brain is relaxed. There is no urgency. No one is waiting. No one is judging. You have time to think. You can pause. You can restart your sentence. You can choose your words carefully. You are in control. But in real life, you are not in control. Someone speaks and they expect an answer immediately, not after you think. Not after you translate, not after you prepare, right now. And that moment changes everything, because now your brain feels exposed. It feels tested. It feels like it must perform. And when the brain feels pressure, it doesn't always perform better. Sometimes it shuts down. It protects you. It pulls you back. It says, don't speak, stay safe. And that's why you freeze. Not because you don't know English, but because your brain is trying to avoid risk. This is a psychological reaction, not a language problem. And the more you avoid speaking in real situations, the stronger this reaction becomes. Because every time you stay silent, your brain learns something. It learns that silence is safe. It learns that speaking is dangerous. And over time, this becomes a habit, a pattern, a default response. So even when you want to speak, your mind stops you. But here's the truth. You cannot build real speaking ability in isolation. You cannot prepare for real conversations without being in them, because real conversation is not just about words. It's about timing, reaction, energy, flow, and these things can only be developed in interaction. You need to feel the pressure. You need to experience the discomfort. You need to go through those awkward moments where you don't know what to say, because that is where your brain learns the fastest. Every real conversation rewires you. Every response builds speed. Every mistake builds awareness. And slowly, you become stronger, not because you studied more, but because you experienced more. Now understand this clearly. You don't need to be ready to start speaking with people. You become ready by speaking with people. This is the shift. Stop waiting for confidence. Start creating it. At first, your voice might shake. Your sentences might break. You might pause. You might feel embarrassed. But that's not failure. That's training. That's progress. Because every time you go through that moment, your brain adapts. It becomes less sensitive to pressure. It becomes faster at responding. It becomes more comfortable with uncertainty. And that's how fluency is built. Not in perfect practice, but in imperfect reality. Start small, short conversations, simple questions, basic answers. Don't try to impress anyone. Don't try to sound advanced. Just try to stay in the conversation. Even if your sentences are simple, even if your words are not perfect. Because communication is not about perfection. It's about connection. And once you focus on connection, everything changes. The pressure reduces. The fear weakens. The words come easier, and something powerful begins to happen. You stop freezing. You start responding. You stop overthinking. You start flowing, until one day, you are in a conversation and you don't even realize it, but you are speaking naturally, without panic, without fear, without stopping. And in that moment, you understand something important. You were never bad at English. You were just hiding from real situations. And now, you're not hiding anymore. You're showing up. You're responding. You're growing in the only place where fluency is built, the real world. 6. You memorize words, but don't use them. Listen carefully. You've learned a lot of English words. More than you think. You've seen them in videos. You've written them in notebooks. You've saved them in your phone. You've told yourself, I know this word. But when it's time to speak, that word is gone. You can't find it. You can't recall it. And you end up using the same basic words again and again. Or worse, you stop speaking completely. Why does this happen? Because memorizing a word is not the same as owning a word. There is a huge difference between recognition and recall. Recognition is easy. When you see or hear a word, your brain says, yes, I know this. But recall is hard. Recall means you can bring that word out of your mind exactly when you need it, without hesitation. And here's the truth. Fluency depends on recall, not recognition. You don't become a fluent speaker by knowing words. You become fluent by using words. And right now, your brain is full of passive vocabulary, words that you understand but cannot use, words that live in your memory but never reach your mouth because you never trained them for real use. Think about this. When you learn a new word, what do you usually do? You read it, you understand the meaning. Maybe you repeat it once or twice, and then you move on. You feel like you learned it. But your brain doesn't work that way. Your brain doesn't store words for speaking unless you actively use them. Because your brain is efficient, it keeps what you use. It deletes what you don't. So if you don't speak a word, your brain marks it as unimportant, and slowly it fades away. That's why you forget. That's why you struggle to find words. That's why your speaking feels limited. Not because you don't know enough words, but because you don't use the words you already know. Now here is the shift you need to make. Stop collecting words. Start activating them. Every time you learn a new word, you must do something with it. You must speak it. You must build a sentence. You must use it in context, because context is what gives a word life. Without context, a word is just information. With context, a word becomes part of your language. Let's go deeper. Imagine you learn the word improve. You understand it. You recognize it, but that's not enough. Now you need to say, I want to improve my English. My speaking is improving slowly. I am trying to improve every day. Now the word is not just in your head. It is in your voice. It is connected to your thoughts. It is linked to real situations. And the more you use it, the stronger that connection becomes. Until one day, you don't need to think about it. It just comes naturally. This is how vocabulary becomes fluency. Not through memorization, but through repetition in real use. Now understand this clearly. You don't need thousands of words to speak English fluently. You need a small number of words, used again and again in different situations. Because repetition builds speed, repetition builds confidence, repetition builds automatic response. But if you keep learning new words every day, without using them, you are just increasing your frustration. You are creating a gap between what you know and what you can say. And that gap is what makes you feel stuck. So simplify your approach. Take fewer words, use them more, repeat them in different sentences, use them in conversations, speak them out loud, even if you are alone. Because every time you use a word, you are strengthening a pathway in your brain. You are making it easier to access. You are making it part of your active vocabulary. And slowly, something powerful begins to happen. Your sentences become richer. Your expressions become clearer. Your mind stops searching for words because the words are already there, ready to come out without effort, without delay. And in that moment, you will realize something important. You were never lacking vocabulary. You were lacking usage. And once you fix that, your fluency starts to grow. Not from learning more, but from using what you already know again and again, until it becomes part of you, until your words are no longer something you remember, but something you live. And that is when your English truly comes alive. 7. You wait for confidence before speaking. Listen carefully. This belief you have, this idea that one day you will wake up feeling ready, feeling confident, feeling prepared to finally speak English without fear, is the exact thing that is holding you back. Because that day will never come. Not like that. Not by waiting. Not by preparing more, not by learning one more rule or watching one more video. Confidence does not arrive before action. Confidence is created through action, but your mind has been trained to think the opposite. It tells you, wait a little more, learn a little more, practice more alone. Then you'll be confident. So you wait, you prepare, you stay in your comfort zone. And days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, and nothing changes. Because you are stuck in a loop, a silent loop, where you keep getting ready, but never actually begin. And the longer you stay in this loop, the stronger it becomes. Because every time you choose not to speak, your brain learns something. It learns that speaking is something to avoid. It learns that silence is safer. It learns that you are not ready. And slowly, this becomes your identity. You start believing it. I need more time. I'm not confident yet. I'll start later. But here is the truth you need to accept. You don't need confidence to speak. You need courage to start. Confidence is not the starting point. It is the result. It is the outcome of doing something again and again until your mind no longer feels threatened by it. Think about anything you are confident in today. Maybe driving, maybe speaking in your native language, maybe using your phone or computer. Were you confident in the beginning? No, you were unsure. You made mistakes. You felt uncomfortable, but you kept doing it. And through repetition, your brain adapted. It became normal, it became easy, and confidence appeared. Not before, but after. English speaking is no different. Right now, your brain sees speaking English as a risk, as something unfamiliar, as something that could go wrong. And your natural response is to avoid it. But avoidance strengthens fear. Every time you avoid speaking, you are feeding the fear. You are making it stronger. You are giving it more control over you. And that's why waiting for confidence doesn't work. Because confidence grows in action, not in avoidance. So if you want to break this pattern, you have to do something uncomfortable. You have to speak before you feel ready. You have to speak when your voice shakes, when your mind is unsure, when your sentences are not perfect, because that is where transformation begins. The first time you do it, it will feel difficult. Your heart will beat faster. Your words might come out wrong. You might pause. You might feel exposed. But you will survive that moment. Nothing bad will happen, and your brain will notice that. It will start to realize, this is not dangerous. This is okay. And the next time you speak, it will be slightly easier. Not perfect, but easier. And then you do it again, and again, and again. And with each repetition, the fear becomes smaller. The hesitation becomes shorter. The voice in your head becomes quieter, and your confidence begins to grow, slowly, naturally, without forcing it, until one day you are speaking and you are not thinking about confidence at all. You are just expressing. You are just communicating. You are just being present in the conversation. And that is real confidence. Not something you wait for, but something you build through action, through repetition, through showing up again and again, even when it feels uncomfortable. So stop asking yourself, when will I feel confident? Start asking yourself, am I willing to speak even if I don't feel confident? Because that one decision changes everything. It breaks the loop. It shifts your mindset. It moves you from waiting to doing, from silence to expression, from fear to growth. And if you commit to this, if you decide that you will no longer wait, but act, something powerful will happen. You will stop delaying your progress. You will stop doubting yourself. You will stop hiding behind preparation. And you will finally begin, not perfectly, but honestly, not confidently at first, but consistently. And through that consistency, confidence will come, not as a promise, but as a result, a natural result of action. And that is when your speaking starts to transform. Not because you became ready, but because you stopped waiting to be. 8. You don't have a daily speaking system. Listen carefully. This is where most learners quietly fail. Not because they are lazy, not because they are not serious, but because they are inconsistent. Some days you feel motivated. You watch videos. You try to speak. You tell yourself, from today, I will improve. But the next day, life happens. You get busy. You feel tired. You skip practice. Then you come back again after a few days and try to start from zero. This cycle repeats again and again, and slowly your progress disappears because fluency is not built in random moments. Fluency is built in daily repetition. Your brain does not change from occasional effort. It changes from consistent patterns, from habits, from things you do every single day, even when you don't feel like it. Right now, your problem is not effort. Your problem is structure. You don't have a system. You rely on motivation, and motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. Some days you feel strong. Some days you feel nothing. And when motivation disappears, so does your practice. But a system doesn't depend on how you feel. A system runs even when you don't want to. A system creates discipline, and discipline creates results. Think about this. If you only practice when you feel like it, you will never reach fluency because fluency requires repetition, daily repetition. Your brain needs constant exposure, constant speaking, constant usage to rewire itself. to build speed, to create automatic responses. But when your practice is random, your brain keeps resetting. It never gets enough repetition to adapt. So every time you try to speak, it feels like you are starting again. That's why you feel stuck. That's why progress feels slow, because there is no continuity. Now imagine a different approach. Imagine you have a simple daily system, not complicated, not overwhelming, just something you follow every day, even for a short time, because consistency is more powerful than intensity. 10 minutes every day is stronger than 1 hour once a week, because daily practice keeps your brain active. It keeps your language alive. It keeps your thinking in English connected. Now understand this clearly. Your goal is not to study English every day. Your goal is to use English every day. There is a difference. Studying is passive. Using is active. Studying builds knowledge. Using builds fluency. So your daily system must include speaking, not just watching, not just listening, not just reading. Speaking, even if it's alone, even if it's simple, even if it feels repetitive. Because repetition is what builds automaticity, and automaticity is what creates fluency. At first, it may feel boring. You may think this is too simple, but simple is powerful. Simple creates consistency. Complex systems break. Simple systems last, and what you need is something you can follow every day without thinking too much, without feeling overwhelmed, because the easier it is to follow, the more likely you are to stay consistent, and consistency is everything. It is the difference between those who improve and those who stay stuck. Now here is something important. You don't need a perfect system. You need a repeatable system. Something you can do daily, without excuses, without overthinking. Because once you remove decision-making, you remove resistance. You don't ask yourself, should I practice today? You just do it. Like brushing your teeth, like eating. It becomes automatic. And when your practice becomes automatic, your progress becomes inevitable. Day by day, your brain adapts. Your thinking becomes faster. Your speaking becomes smoother. Your confidence becomes stronger, not because of one big effort, but because of small actions repeated daily. And slowly, without even noticing, you change. Your hesitation reduces. Your words come easier. Your conversations feel natural. And one day, you look back and realize something powerful. You didn't become fluent in one moment. You became fluent through hundreds of small, consistent days. Days when you showed up. Days when you practiced. Days when you didn't feel like it, but did it anyway. And that is the real secret. Not talent, not intelligence, not even motivation, but consistency, built through a simple daily system. So stop relying on random effort. Stop waiting for the perfect time. Create a system, follow it every day, and let time do the rest. Because if you stay consistent, your fluency is not a question of if. It is only a matter of when. 9. You focus on difficult English. Listen carefully. This might be one of the most hidden mistakes you are making, and it feels like progress. That's why it's dangerous. You believe that to sound fluent, you need to use big words, complex sentences, advanced vocabulary, impressive expressions. So when you try to speak, you don't go for the simple sentence. You go for the perfect one. You search for better words. You try to sound smart. You try to sound fluent. And in that moment, everything slows down. Your mind starts working harder. You begin searching, calculating, replacing, adjusting, and before you even speak, you are already tired. Because you are not trying to communicate. You are trying to perform, and performance creates pressure. Pressure creates hesitation, and hesitation kills fluency. Think about what really happens in your mind. You want to say something simple like, I am tired, but instead of saying it, you think, maybe I should say, I am exhausted, or I am feeling fatigued. And now you hesitate, you pause, you start thinking which one sounds better, which one is more correct, which one sounds more advanced. And in that process, you lose the moment. The conversation moves on, and you are still thinking, This is the trap. You are trying to sound fluent instead of becoming fluent. And real fluency is not about complexity. It is about speed, clarity, flow. Fluent speakers don't try to impress. They try to express. They use simple words, simple sentences, but they use them fast, naturally, without stopping. And that's what makes them sound fluent, not the complexity, but the continuity. Now think about your own language. When you speak in your native language, do you use complex vocabulary all the time? No. You use simple words, common phrases, natural expressions, and yet you sound fluent because fluency is not about how difficult your words are. It's about how easily your thoughts come out. But in English, you change your approach. You make it harder. You add pressure. You try to sound better than you are. And that's what blocks you, because your brain cannot handle complexity under pressure. It needs simplicity. It needs clarity. It needs ease. So when you force complexity, your brain slows down. It searches more, it doubts more, and you speak less. This is why you feel stuck. Not because your English is weak, but because your expectations are too heavy. You are asking your brain to do too much at once. Think fast. Choose advanced words. Build perfect sentences. Avoid mistakes. Sound fluent, all at the same time. That is too much, and your brain responds by shutting down. Now here is the shift you need to make. Simplify everything. Choose the easiest words, the most basic sentences, the most natural expressions. Don't try to sound advanced. Try to sound clear, because clarity builds confidence. Clarity builds speed. Clarity builds flow. And once you have flow, you can slowly improve your vocabulary. But first, you need movement. You need continuity. You need to keep speaking without stopping, because that is the foundation of fluency. Now understand this clearly. There is nothing wrong with simple English. Simple English is powerful. Simple English is natural. Simple English is fluent. In fact, most real conversations in English are built on simple words and basic structures. So when you simplify your speech, you are not going backward. You are moving in the right direction. You are making it easier for your brain to respond, easier for your words to come out, easier for your confidence to grow. At first, it may feel too basic. You may think, this is not enough, but it is enough, more than enough, because what you need right now is not impressive language. It is usable language, language that comes out quickly, without hesitation, without pressure, without overthinking. And once you master that, once your brain becomes comfortable with speaking simply, then you can expand. Then you can add more words, more expressions, more variation. But now it will be easy because the foundation is strong, because the flow is there, because you are no longer stuck. So stop chasing difficult English. Stop trying to sound advanced. Stop adding pressure to your mind and start doing the one thing that actually creates fluency. Speak simply. Speak clearly. Speak continuously, because fluency is not about sounding smart. It's about being able to speak freely. And once you experience that freedom, you will never go back. You will realize that the power was never in complexity. It was always in simplicity. 10. You compare yourself to others. Listen carefully. This habit, this silent, constant comparison in your mind, is draining your confidence more than you realize. You see someone speaking English fluently. Their words flow. Their sentences sound smooth. They don't pause. They don't struggle. And in that moment, you don't feel inspired. You feel behind. You start thinking, why am I not like that? They speak so easily. I can't even form a sentence. I've been trying for so long, and I'm still not there. And slowly, that comparison turns into doubt. Doubt turns into frustration, and frustration turns into silence. Because every time you compare yourself, you lower your own value. You ignore your progress. You forget your journey. You only focus on the gap between where you are and where they are. But here is the truth you are not seeing. You are comparing your beginning to someone else's middle, or even their end. You are looking at their current level without seeing their past, without seeing the years of struggle, the mistakes, the embarrassment, the moments where they also froze, the times they also felt stuck. You only see the result, not the process. And that creates a false picture in your mind, a picture where you feel small, slow, not good enough. But that picture is incomplete because every fluent speaker you see today was once exactly where you are. They also struggled. They also doubted themselves. They also compared themselves to others. But at some point, they made a decision. They stopped looking at others and started focusing on themselves. Because comparison does not help you improve. It distracts you. It takes your energy away from your own growth. It shifts your attention from progress to pressure. And when you feel pressure, you stop performing. You stop speaking. You hold back. Because now you are not just trying to communicate. You are trying to match someone else. You are trying to reach a level instantly without going through the process. And that is impossible. Growth takes time. Fluency takes repetition. Confidence takes experience. There is no shortcut. Now think about this deeply. What happens when you compare yourself? You feel behind. You feel discouraged. You feel like giving up. But what happens when you focus on yourself? You notice small improvements. You see progress. You feel motivated. You keep going. So the real question is not, why am I not as good as them? The real question is, am I better than I was yesterday? Because that is the only comparison that matters. Your past self versus your present self. And if you are improving, even slightly, you are on the right path. Now here is the shift you need to make. Stop measuring your progress against others. Start measuring it against your own growth. Did you speak more today than yesterday? Did you hesitate less? Did you try even when you felt uncomfortable? That is progress. And that is enough. Because fluency is not built in one big jump. It is built in small steps, repeated every day. And those small steps add up, even if you don't notice it immediately, even if it feels slow. Because slow progress is still progress. And the only way to lose that progress is to stop, to quit, to give up because you feel behind. But you are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be in your own journey. Now imagine this. Instead of comparing yourself, you focus completely on your own path. You speak daily. You improve little by little. You accept your mistakes. You build your confidence step by step. And after some time, you look back and you realize something surprising. You are no longer the same person. You are speaking more. You are thinking faster. You are responding better. Not because you tried to become like someone else, but because you stayed consistent with your own growth. And one day, someone will look at you and feel the same way you feel now. They will think, how is this person so fluent? How do they speak so easily? And they won't see your journey. They won't see your struggle. They will only see your result, just like you are doing right now with others. So don't let comparison stop you. Don't let it break your confidence. Don't let it distract you from your path, because your journey is yours. Your pace is yours. Your progress is yours. And as long as you keep moving forward, you will get there. Not by comparing, but by continuing, one step at a time, one sentence at a time, one conversation at a time, until the gap you once saw no longer exists, and you are no longer looking at others because you have become the person you were trying to be. 11. You don't train your brain to respond fast. Listen carefully. Fluency is not just about what you know. It's about how fast you can use what you know. And right now, your biggest weakness is not knowledge. It's speed. You take too long to respond. Not because you don't understand, but because your brain is slow at producing language. Someone asks you a simple question, and you understand it immediately. But your answer doesn't come immediately. There is a pause, a gap, a moment where your brain is searching, building, checking, doubting, and in that gap, your confidence drops, the conversation loses flow, and you feel stuck again. This is not a vocabulary problem. This is not a grammar problem. This is a response speed problem. Your brain has not been trained to react quickly in English. It has been trained to think slowly, to analyze, to translate, to build sentences carefully. And that kind of thinking is too slow for real conversation, because real conversation is fast. It moves quickly. There is no time to prepare, no time to calculate, no time to be perfect. You either respond or you fall behind. And when you fall behind, you start to panic. You feel pressure. You try to catch up. But the more you try, the slower your brain becomes. Because pressure slows thinking. It blocks flow. It increases hesitation. And that creates a cycle. Slow response, pressure, more slowness, silence, and you stay trapped in that cycle. Now understand this clearly. Fluency is speed, not perfection. A simple sentence said quickly is more powerful than a perfect sentence said late, because conversation is about timing, not accuracy. People don't wait for perfect grammar. They respond to flow, to rhythm, to connection. And if your response is too slow, you break that connection. That's why even if your English is good, you still feel like you can't speak, because your brain cannot keep up with real-time conversation. So what is the solution? You must train your brain to respond faster, not by learning more, but by practicing instant thinking. You need to reduce the time between hearing something and saying something, because that gap is where your problem lives. And the only way to reduce that gap is to practice under conditions that force speed. You need to answer quickly, without overthinking, without building perfect sentences, without stopping to check grammar. You must allow your brain to react even if the response is simple, even if it's not perfect, because speed comes from repetition, from doing the same thing again and again, until your brain no longer needs to think so much. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. You will feel like your answers are too basic, too short, too simple. But that is exactly what you need, because simple responses are fast, and fast responses build flow. And flow builds confidence. As your speed improves, your brain becomes more relaxed because it no longer feels pressure to perform. It knows it can respond. It trusts itself. And when your brain trusts itself, everything changes. Your hesitation reduces. Your words come out naturally. Your conversations become smoother. And something powerful happens. You stop thinking about English and you start using English. That is the shift from thinking to reacting, from building to expressing, from slow to natural. Now imagine this. Someone asks you a question, and without pausing, you answer, not perfectly, but clearly, naturally, without fear, without delay. That moment is what you are working toward. Not perfection, but speed, because speed creates confidence. Speed creates flow. Speed creates fluency. And once you develop that speed, you can improve everything else. You can refine your grammar. You can expand your vocabulary. You can make your sentences more advanced. But first, you need movement. You need reaction. You need to train your brain to respond. So stop trying to say the perfect sentence. Start trying to say a fast sentence, even if it's simple, even if it's basic, even if it's not ideal, because every fast response is a step toward fluency, and every delayed response is a step back into hesitation. Choose speed, choose action, choose response, and with time, your brain will adapt. Your words will come faster, your confidence will grow stronger, and your speaking will finally feel natural. Not because you know everything, but because you can use what you know instantly. 12. You're not immersed in English. Listen carefully. This is the final piece, the one that quietly controls everything else. You don't live in English. You visit it. for a few minutes, maybe an hour. Then you leave. You go back to your native language. Your thoughts switch back. Your environment switches back. Your brain switches back. And the cycle repeats. You touch English, but you never stay in it. And that is why it feels difficult. Because your brain is not designed to learn language in isolation. It learns through environment, through repetition, through constant exposure, through living inside the language, not just studying it. Right now, English is not part of your daily life. It is something you practice, not something you use, and that difference is everything. When a language is not part of your environment, your brain treats it as temporary, something optional, something secondary. It doesn't prioritize it. It doesn't adapt to it. It doesn't build speed in it, because it doesn't need to. Your brain always adapts to what you use the most. If you live in your native language all day, that becomes automatic, fast, effortless, and English stays slow. Heavy, unnatural, not because it's hard, but because it's unfamiliar. Now think about how children learn language. They don't study. They don't memorize. They don't translate. They are surrounded by the language. Every sound they hear, every word they speak, every interaction they experience is in that language. And because of that, their brain has no choice. It adapts, it absorbs, it becomes fluent naturally. Now compare that to your situation. You spend most of your day thinking, speaking, and living in another language, and then you expect your brain to suddenly switch to English and perform smoothly. That's not how it works. Your brain needs consistency of environment. It needs repeated exposure. It needs immersion, not full-time, but regular, daily, intentional. You need to bring English into your life. Not just your study time, your life, your thoughts, your routines, your habits, because the more your brain is exposed to English, the more familiar it becomes. And familiarity reduces resistance. It reduces hesitation. It reduces fear, until English no longer feels like a foreign task, but a natural part of your thinking. Now understand this clearly. You don't need to move to another country. You don't need perfect surroundings. You don't need a perfect environment. You need to create your own environment with what you already have. Your phone, your time, your attention, your choices. Because immersion is not about location. It is about repetition. It is about how often your brain is interacting with English. Now imagine this. Instead of using English for 1 hour a day, you spread it across your day. You think small thoughts in English. You describe what you are doing. You react in English. You surround yourself with English sounds. You make it part of your routine, not something separate. And slowly, your brain stops switching. It starts staying. It starts thinking in English more often. It starts responding faster, because now English is not something new. It is something normal, and that changes everything. Your hesitation reduces. Your translation decreases. Your confidence increases, because your brain is no longer struggling with unfamiliar input. It is working with something it sees again and again, something it recognizes, something it is used to. And that is the key. Familiarity creates fluency. The more familiar something becomes, the easier it feels, the faster it comes, the more natural it sounds. And that only happens through immersion. Now here is the truth you need to accept. If English is only a small part of your day, your progress will always be slow. But if English becomes part of your life, your progress becomes unstoppable, because your brain has no choice. It adapts, it evolves, it improves automatically, without force, without stress, without overthinking. And one day, you will notice something surprising. You are thinking in English, without trying, without forcing it. It just happens, naturally. And when that happens, speaking becomes easy, because speaking is just thinking out loud. And if your thinking is in English, your speaking will follow, effortlessly. So stop treating English like a subject. Stop limiting it to practice time. Bring it into your life. Make it part of your environment. Make it part of your daily experience. And let your brain do what it does best, adapt. Because once your environment changes, your thinking changes. And once your thinking changes, your speaking transforms. And that is when you finally break free from everything that was holding you back. Not by learning more, but by living differently, in the language you once struggled with, but now belongs to you. Before you leave, take a moment and think about this. You didn't struggle because you were bad at English. You struggled because you were following the wrong path. And now you know the truth. You know what's been holding you back. You know what needs to change. But understanding is not enough. Nothing changes until you do. So from today, stop translating. Stop waiting. Stop overthinking. Start speaking, even if it's slow, even if it's not perfect, even if it feels uncomfortable. Because that's where your new voice begins. Not in perfection, but in action. And if you stay consistent, if you follow what you've learned here, there will come a moment when you won't have to think before speaking. You'll just speak naturally, confidently, without fear. And when that moment comes, you'll realize something powerful. You were never stuck. You were just one shift away. So don't go back to old habits. Don't go back to silence. Use your voice every single day. Because fluency is not something you wait for, it's something you build. And now you finally know how.